Some silences weigh more than a scream, and at a certain age, those silences don't come from the outside world, but from what you've stopped standing up for inside. Time, dignity, your body, your beliefs, everything you gave up to please, to hold things together, to avoid loss. But there comes a moment when continuing to give in means disappearing altogether. The truth is uncomfortable. Nothing was taken from you by force. It was you who, little by little, handed pieces of yourself over to others. And today, what remains of you deserves to be protected with the same fierceness a mother uses to protect her child. In this video, we're going to go over 10 things that, after 60, you can no longer afford to sacrifice for anyone. Some will sting, others will remind you of what you already knew but had kept quiet about. And I promise, the last one might completely change the way you see the life still ahead of you. My name is Gabriel, and if you decide to stay until the end, it won't be out of curiosity, but because deep down, you know it's time to reclaim what still belongs to you. How many times have you said, "It doesn't matter anymore," when what you really meant was, "I'm tired of no one valuing my time"? Maybe you said it to a child who came home late without a word. Maybe you felt it while waiting for a call that never came, or when someone asked something of you without checking if you could, or even wanted to, help. And every time you stay quiet, every time you give up your space or your hours for fear of upsetting someone, you give away something you can never get back, your conscious time. And that is exactly the first thing you can no longer afford to sacrifice for anyone. They say time is gold, but that's not true. Gold can be stored, sold, or recovered. Time can't. And when you reach this stage of life, every hour becomes sacred. Yet so many people still act like your time is an endless resource. They ask for favors, include you in plans without asking, interrupt you without a second thought, as if you had nothing more important to do, as if your life were on hold, waiting for others to decide when you're allowed to exist again. This isn't just disrespect. It's a silent way of erasing you, because when others don't value your time, they're telling you, without words, that your presence is useful, but not meaningful, that your days don't matter as much as theirs. And if you don't set a boundary, that belief starts to seep into you. You start living on someone else's schedule, filling your days with other people's urgencies, letting life pass over you while you step aside. Think about this. Imagine each day is like a lit candle. You don't know how long it will burn, but you know it's running out. Now imagine that every time someone takes your time without respect, that candle burns out just a little faster. And instead of guarding it, you hold it up so others can warm themselves by its flame. That light wasn't meant to shine for everyone at your expense. It was meant to help you see your own path clearly. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The life of each person is governed by their attention. Where you place your attention, your soul follows." If each day your attention goes to the urgent, the external, to what others need, how much of your soul are you leaving outside yourself? And how many more times are you going to let others manage your time like you don't have the right to choose? Conscious time isn't just what the clock says. It's the inner state of being awake, present, and aware. It's the moment when you choose who to talk to, when to rest, what to read, what silence to listen to. If you don't defend those moments, no one will. It doesn't matter if they call you selfish or distant. It doesn't matter if someone gets offended. Your time is yours because your life is yours, and no one else has the right to live it for you. So before you keep watching this video, pause for a second and ask yourself, who are you giving your time to without even realizing it? And what would happen if you decided to take it back? Today, it doesn't take a grand gesture. All it takes is a firm word, your own schedule, a not now that doesn't need to be explained. Because while others see you as available, you can start to see yourself as in charge, and that at this stage in life is the first step toward freedom. We've already understood that your time can no longer be a territory occupied by other people's urgencies. Now it's time to take just as seriously something that, when lost, leaves you too drained to stand tall: your emotional rest. We've reached the second key point of this video, and that's exactly it: your emotional rest, because you were not born to carry other people's drama. Sometimes we think resting means sleeping, turning off the TV, or stopping physical tasks. But true rest starts from within. It's that invisible pause where the soul can breathe, when you're not on the defensive, not in problem-solving mode, not absorbing the emotional weight of everyone around you. The problem is that many people, especially women who've spent their lives taking care of others, reach this stage never having known that kind of rest. And what they're feeling isn't just exhaustion. It's the weight of accumulated emotional injustice. The cause doesn't lie only with others, but with what we've learned to normalize. From a young age, we were taught that being a good person means being available, that if you love someone, you carry their burdens, that if you can, you should. And without realizing it, we build an identity around sacrifice. Rest became a luxury. Saying "I'm tired" became a sign of weakness. But the truth is, no soul can blossom while living in constant alert. Stoicism isn't about enduring without complaint. It's about knowing which battles deserve your energy and which ones silently destroy you. Epictetus said, "It's not the events themselves that disturb us, but the meaning we give them." In this context, it means that it's not the person calling you at odd hours, or the relative who always shows up with their problems, that robs your peace. It's the belief that you can't say no, the thought that if you don't respond, you're failing. That idea, repeated over the years, becomes an emotional prison. And the reality of that is devastating. You wake up with a knot in your stomach without knowing why. You keep your phone close, even when nothing urgent is expected. And when you finally have a quiet moment, your mind won't stop. Replaying conversations, anticipating conflicts, reliving wounds. That constant state of alert wears down not just your energy, but your ability to enjoy life. And worst of all, while you're paying the price for other people's well-being, they just keep living their lives, unaware of the cost. This kind of exhaustion isn't fixed by a vacation. It's healed with boundaries, with decisions, with silences that don't need to be explained. And it's healed spiritually when you remember that your soul was made for peace, not for other people's burdens. There's a verse many repeat, but few truly understand. "Come to me, all who are weary, and I will give you rest." The rest being promised there isn't physical. It's the rest of a soul that stops holding what was never hers to carry. That allows itself to let go. Maybe it's hard for you to picture yourself like that. Maybe you think that if you're not available, everything will fall apart. But that idea is a lie you learned to avoid making others uncomfortable. The truth is, the world won't fall apart because you say no, but you might if you don't say it in time. Think of it this way. Every time you protect your emotional rest, you're cultivating fertile ground where the things that truly belong to you can grow. Your desires, your thoughts, your calm. It's not selfishness. It's reverence for the life that still pulses within you. And anyone who truly loves you should never ask you to give that up. So ask yourself honestly, how many times this week have you felt emotionally drained by problems that weren't yours? And what would happen if you gave yourself permission to let them go? You don't need an excuse. You just need to remember that your rest is non-negotiable, because your soul also deserves a good night's sleep. When you start protecting your emotional rest, something becomes clear. Not everyone should have access to you. Not everyone deserves your attention, your time, or your energy. And that brings us to the third key point of this video, one that can truly mark a before and after in your life if you take it to heart: your inner space. Because not everyone deserves a place in your private world. That's not a harsh warning. It's a gentle but firm truth, like a door you calmly choose to close. More often than not, emotional exhaustion doesn't come from major conflicts, but from constant small intrusions. People who talk without listening, who step into your life without wiping their emotional feet, who demand without giving. And if you don't set clear boundaries, your inner space turns into a public hallway where anyone can walk through, give their opinion, drag their shadow, and move on without a second thought. Stoicism teaches us to guard the source of our thoughts. Marcus Aurelius put it simply, the soul becomes dyed with the color of its thoughts. If your days are filled with people who sow complaints, judgment, or pressure, what do you think will grow inside you? The strategy is simple but powerful. Create an invisible threshold. It's not about cutting people off harshly, but about clearly seeing who brings light and who only brings shadow, and acting from there. When someone reaches out only to vent with no sense of reciprocity, when someone disrupts your peace with issues you no longer want to carry, just breathe and respond calmly. I can't today. You don't owe anyone an explanation. Just set the boundary. This practice, though uncomfortable at first, has a direct effect. It begins to cleanse your inner home. Just like when you reorganize a room, toss what no longer serves you, and make space only for what adds value, your emotional world also needs order, because if you don't do it, no one else will. I remember a woman from Peru who wrote to me. She said that for decades, she allowed her home to fill with unannounced visitors who came without gratitude, without respect. Until one day, exhausted, she realized it wasn't just her house being invaded, it was her. She decided to close her door for an entire week, no explanations given. And that week was the first in years where she truly felt like she could breathe. It wasn't an act of revenge. It was an act of self-love. That's how you should treat your inner space too, as a sacred place. I want to invite you to subscribe to the channel and click like. That simple action helps this community keep growing with clarity and respect. And let me know in the comments what country you're watching from. To let me know this part really spoke to you, write the phrase, "Not everyone deserves my silence." We still have important lessons ahead, and the last one may change the way you see yourself and what you're no longer willing to give away. Let's keep going. When you start closing off your inner world to those who don't honor it, something else becomes clear, something subtler, but just as urgent. Many of your decisions aren't really yours, not because someone is directly imposing them on you, but because you've spent years believing they don't matter. This brings us to the fourth point in this video, and I want you to hear it with the seriousness it deserves. Your small decisions, because that's where the great life ahead of you is built. This is one of the most common and invisible mistakes of old age, believing that everyday decisions no longer count. Choosing what to wear, what to listen to in the morning, which path to take on a walk, or how to respond to subtle disrespect might seem trivial. But they're not. These are foundational acts because they reflect who you believe you are and how much you value your own judgment. The problem is that many people reach this stage carrying a deeply damaging idea that their role is now secondary, that there's no more room to maneuver, that life is already written. So they fall into the trap of passivity. They stop asking, stop deciding, stop choosing. They adapt, they settle, and little by little, their will weakens like a muscle that's no longer used. This error shows up in soft, almost unnoticeable phrases. It doesn't matter anymore. At my age, what's the point? Let them decide. I'm just along for the ride. And so, what starts as a temporary surrender becomes a destructive habit. Every time you let someone else choose for you, you reinforce the idea that your opinion no longer matters. And that's not just a practical loss, it's a wound to your dignity. Because no one can grow spiritually while silently giving up their own will. Marcus Aurelius said that the soul is shaped by the acts it repeats. And if each day you repeat the act of not deciding, what you're shaping isn't peace, it's resignation disguised as calm. It's not wisdom, it's accumulated exhaustion. The consequences are brutal and quiet. One day you realize you can't remember the last time you chose something just for yourself. You've eaten what others picked, gone where others planned, listened to what others put on. You've lived according to everyone else's schedule, as if your presence had no weight. And in that daily neglect of your power to choose, your inner fire begins to fade. You stop feeling wonder, stop pushing back, stop dreaming. You become a spectator in your own life. That's why this point is anything but small. Reclaiming your small decisions is a radical act. You don't need a big project or a dramatic change. All it takes is choosing what you want to do with the next hour. Just look at your day and ask yourself, am I doing this because I want to, or because I've stopped questioning everything? And if the answer makes you uncomfortable, you're on the right path, because that discomfort is a sign of life. It's your soul reminding you that you're still here, that you can still take back your direction, and that every small decision is a declaration, I haven't given up, I am here, and my voice still matters. We've reached the fifth point in this video, and what comes next touches a place often wrapped in shame and silence. We're talking about your body, or more precisely, the relationship you have with it. Because even though it's still yours, many have come to see it as an enemy, a burden, or an obstacle, but it's not. This fifth point is clear and uncompromising. Your body, because it's your only temple, even when it no longer moves like it used to. The trap here is deep and painful, believing that aging makes your body less valuable, that because it no longer moves with the same ease, because it's no longer as firm, because it aches, gets in the way, or feels uncomfortable, it no longer deserves attention. And that's a mistake that doesn't just harm your body, it erodes your dignity. The consequences of this belief show up in every neglected gesture, every postponed doctor's appointment, every meal eaten without thought, every sleepless night that's accepted as the new normal. But beyond the physical lies, the symbolic. When you stop caring for your body, you're telling yourself you no longer matter. And over time, that kills more than your health. It kills your joy for life. Because your body isn't just a vehicle, it's also a boundary. And if you don't respect it, no one else will. It's no coincidence that many older women end up being treated as if they're fragile, disposable, or invisible. Abandoning your body is read by others as surrender, and in that space, dependency, frustration, and the loss of respect, often from the very people closest to you, begin to grow. But it's not irreversible. The solution doesn't lie in miracle creams or imposed diets. It starts when you change the way you see your body, when you stop blaming it for what it can no longer do and start thanking it for what it still carries. When you choose to walk, even if it's slowly. When you choose to eat with intention, not out of guilt. When you touch your own arms with kindness, not criticism. And above all, when you stop comparing yourself to who you used to be or to what others expect you to be. Your body doesn't need to be young to be worthy. It needs to be lived in with respect. The mindset you need is not getting back to who I used to be. That idea is cruel and soaked in nostalgia. What you need is to reconnect with the value of being alive, of being able to move, to feel, to breathe. Even with aches, even with limits, your body is still the channel through which life speaks to you. And if you listen, if you care for it, if you treat it like a companion instead of an enemy, then you're taking a real step toward freedom. I won't promise you miracles. I'll offer you something better, an honest and possible perspective. Because when you start caring for your body not for appearances, but out of respect, you're telling yourself that you're still here, and that your story isn't over yet. When you start treating your body with respect, something lights up inside you, the sense that you're still alive, still here. But that clarity can hurt when you realize how long you've been waiting for things to change without moving a single piece yourself. And that brings us to the sixth point in this video, one that hits hard without asking for permission: your sense of wonder. Because life doesn't end as long as you're still able to be amazed. This isn't advice to smile more or some shallow invitation to look on the bright side. It's a warning, because when you lose your sense of wonder, it's not just that you stop enjoying life, it's that something inside you starts to die, even if your body keeps going. I want you to close your eyes for a moment and picture yourself 20 years from now. Don't idealize it. Don't project wishful thinking. Imagine yourself with the clarity you have today. What do you see? A woman who still marvels at the light in the afternoon, who chooses to learn something new, who laughs alone when a favorite song comes on, or someone who repeats the same routine, who waits without really waiting, who breathes but no longer lives. That version of you isn't far off. You're building her today with every gesture, every thought, every choice you make or avoid. If you don't nurture your sense of wonder, the world becomes flat. Conversations feel empty, days blur together, and anything new feels like a threat. You cling to what's familiar, even if what's familiar no longer serves you. This isn't about age, it's about choice. There are 80-year-olds still asking questions, exploring, feeling. And there are 55-year-olds who've already pulled the curtain shut on their soul because they stopped believing anything could surprise them. They stopped reading, stopped taking aimless walks, stopped looking at the sky. They locked themselves into the safety of sameness. And from there, life loses its texture. It becomes predictable, mechanical, exhausting. Not because nothing's happening outside, but because there's no openness left inside to receive it. And that emotional shutdown has brutal consequences. You become impatient, bitter, oversensitive to what annoys you, and numb to what could inspire you. You lose the ability to connect with others because someone who no longer feels wonder can't truly listen. And little by little, your solitude stops feeling like rest. It starts feeling like punishment. That's when the soul-crushing phrases show up. What's the point? It's useless. It's too late. But the truth is different. It's not too late if you can still be moved by something. It's not useless if you can still discover something that stirs you. And it's not over if you can still see something with fresh eyes. Maybe today, you don't have answers. Maybe you don't even know where to begin. But one question could change everything. When was the last time something truly amazed you? It doesn't matter if it was something small. What matters is whether you are open enough to feel it. Because life is still speaking to you. The problem is, maybe you're no longer listening. And if that's the case, it's urgent to reopen that door. Because as long as there's a spark of wonder left in you, you can still ignite a new chapter. But if you let it die, all that will remain is repetition, complaint, and the slow unraveling of a life that no longer dares to look ahead. If you've made it this far with attention, you've probably felt it already. Each of the previous points wasn't just a suggestion, it was a mirror. And now, after talking about your time, your rest, your decisions, your body, and your sense of wonder, only one truly important question remains. Are you going to keep waiting for something outside of you to change, or are you going to start acting from within? Because we've reached the seventh point in this video, and there's no gentle way to say it. You're right to be alone, because the wrong company weighs heavier than chosen solitude. This is one of those truths many don't want to face, because it means admitting that the cost of keeping certain relationships has been too high. And I'm not just talking about romantic ones, but any bond that drains your energy without giving anything back. children who only show up when they need something, friends who only call to unload, partners who stay out of habit but no longer see you. All of it leaves an invisible residue that poisons your peace. The trap here is thinking that being alone is a failure, that if no one calls, you must have done something wrong. But that's not true. The real failure isn't being alone. It's surrounding yourself with people who make you feel even lonelier, who make you doubt your worth, who exhaust you, who silence you. Being poorly accompanied is worse than sitting in silence with yourself, because when you choose your solitude with clarity, it becomes sacred, a fertile space where you can reconnect with your voice, your rhythm, your real priorities. Your life won't transform as long as you're surrounded by what drains you, and it won't change while you keep justifying others with thoughts like, "He's my son, I can't step away," or "I'm too old to cut ties." No, you're not too old. You're alive. And as long as you're alive, you have the right to choose who gets your energy. Respect isn't something you beg for. Respect is something you choose, starting from within. Because when you respect yourself enough not to accept what hurts you, you begin to teach the world how it should treat you. I want you to take a close look at your surroundings. Look at your calls, your visits, your conversations. Do they nourish you or drain you? Do they lift you up or leave you more tired? And if the answer isn't clear, ask yourself something even deeper. If this were your last month of life, would you still allow the same people to be part of it? Because the truth, though painful, is that many of those people won't change. And the only way to stop wasting time is to stop waiting for them to. Change begins when you decide, when you take the space you need, without drama, without forced explanations, just with the quiet clarity of knowing your peace is not for sale. Solitude is not a threat, it's a tool. It's the space where you can look at yourself with respect again. And once you learn to live in it with dignity, you no longer settle for less than that. The day you stop fearing being alone is the day you'll finally be ready to choose only what truly serves you. Because at this stage of life, you're not here to beg for presence. You're here to claim your space and stand in it with strength. That's the real beginning of your freedom. If you've already understood that you don't have to keep sharing your life with those who only drain you, then it's time to look inward with even more clarity. Because once silence arrives, so does the echo of what you truly believe. And that's where the 8th point of this video begins, your personal faith. Because no one has authority over what you feel in the depths of your soul. This isn't about religion or dogma. It's about that invisible space that holds you up when everything else falls apart. That strength that doesn't need proof or explanation. And yet, many times we give it away, we hide it, or we deny it to fit in, to please, or to avoid conflict. That's one of the most devastating mistakes you can make at this point in your life, betraying your faith just to avoid making others uncomfortable. In practice, it shows up when you hold back words you wanted to speak because not everyone believes in that, or when you doubt your intuition because others call it nonsense. It happens when something feels true for you, but you stay quiet because you're too old to still believe. And in that quiet act of self-censorship, you weaken your connection to what makes you strong. You disconnect from your roots. You stop praying, stop meditating, stop giving thanks, stop speaking to that God who maybe has no name, but has always been there. And little by little, your spirituality stops being a living flame and becomes just another decorative phrase. Today, I want to offer you a simple practice. Take a moment each day, even just 5 minutes, to sit in silence with what you believe. Not what you were told to believe, not what others approve of, just you and your truth. It can be a prayer, a phrase, a conscious breath, a letter to the unseen. The form doesn't matter. What matters is returning to that inner place where no one else holds power over you. That daily practice isn't an empty ritual. It's an act of spiritual sovereignty, and you can begin it today. You don't need anyone's permission. But to sustain it, you'll need more than intention. You'll need the firm decision that your inner peace is worth more than external approval. You'll need the strength to face those who mock, who judge, who want you disconnected from yourself, and to say to them without speaking, I answer to myself here, because that's the price of a living faith. Temporary solitude, social discomfort, the courage to not betray yourself. And if you're not willing to pay that price, you'll remain a hostage to others' beliefs, even if you whisper beautiful quotes to yourself. The responsibility is yours. No one will give you back your faith if you're the one hiding it. No one will protect your inner world if you don't defend it. This stage of life isn't for negotiating what keeps you standing. It's for owning it, for looking it in the eye and saying, this is mine. This gives me strength. This is not up for debate. Because when you reclaim your faith, you don't become weaker, you become unstoppable. And from that place, everything else, routine, relationships, the future, feels lighter. Because you know who you are, you know what you're made of. And in the end, that's the one thing no one can ever take from you. Once you begin to defend your personal faith with clarity, something else starts to rise. Something more uncomfortable. The memory of everything you kept quiet, everything you accepted, everything you endured just to avoid confrontation. And that leads us to the 9th point in this video, your dignified memory, because forgetting your worth is the beginning of surrender. This is one of the most subtle traps of growing older, looking back only to downplay yourself. Telling yourself, it wasn't that bad, everyone goes through this, there's no point in bringing it up now. But there is a point. Because every time you hide a part of your story to keep others comfortable, you're building your present on denial. And denial is barren ground. Nothing real can grow there. The most common excuses sound like this. It's over. Why stir it up? It's too late to rewrite my story. My kids wouldn't understand. No one would believe me now. But the truth is, you don't need anyone to believe you. You don't need anyone to understand. What you need is to stop lying to yourself. Because as long as you keep repeating those phrases, you're becoming your own jailer. Freedom doesn't begin when others validate you. It begins when you choose to honor your journey, even if it was painful, even if it was unfair, even if you made mistakes. You weren't born to apologize for surviving. You were born to live truthfully, even if that truth stings. Memory isn't just for recalling dates and names. It's there to uphold your dignity, to be able to say, I lived this, I carried this, I chose this or endured it, but it does not fully define me. And by remembering clearly, you also choose what you'll never allow again. That's the real purpose of a dignified memory, not to anchor you to the past, but to give you strength to write the present with greater clarity. But if you hide it, downplay it, or let others rewrite your story in a smaller tone, you end up becoming a reduced version of yourself, a shadow, a functional figure who no longer recognizes her own reflection. Many believe it's easier to forget, but forgetting isn't healing, it's numbing. And that numbness leaves you motionless, without drive, without fire. Stoicism doesn't ask you to deny your story. It asks you to face it with courage, not to dramatize it or sugarcoat it, but to take it for what it is, the foundation on which you can now build something stronger. If you don't acknowledge your worth, others will decide what you deserve. And that's where submission begins, when you let the world define your story because you denied yourself the right to tell it. So I'll say this without decoration. You are not here to erase what you've lived. You're here to give it a place, a name, and dignity. Not to victimize yourself, but to look at yourself with respect. And from that place, to decide that no one, absolutely no one, has the authority to diminish you. Memory is a weapon if you know how to use it, and you carry it within. Choose to carry it with courage, because when you remember with truth, every step forward has more strength, and every silence broken becomes freedom. After reclaiming your dignified memory, the hardest part isn't remembering. It's holding on to it. Holding on to that truth when those around you ask for silence. Holding on to that self-respect when old habits try to creep back in. Because the greatest danger isn't having lived in submission. It's returning to it after you've already stepped out. That's why we've reached the 10th and final point in this video, perhaps the most crucial, your final word. Because this stage of life is yours too, and no one else should write it for you. This is where many people retreat. They've made changes, set boundaries, said no for the first time, begun to see themselves differently. But then come the doubts, the comments, the old loyalties dressed up as affection. And without realizing it, they go back to how things were. They give in again. They justify again. They shrink again. And everything they had begun to build dissolves into the routine of inertia. This happens because we often confuse a powerful moment with real transformation. The impulse helps you make a decision. True transformation requires you to sustain it, and to sustain it, you need more than just the feeling of the moment. You need a clear strategy, one that doesn't depend on how you feel, but on who you've decided to be. That strategy is simple, but it demands strength. Write it down. Write your final word. Not the final word of your life, but the final word of this chapter. Define in your own terms how you want to be treated, what you will no longer accept, what you will protect above all. Don't write it to share, write it to remember, to read when the old voices come back with the same guilt trips, the same, but you always. That page will be your anchor, your shield, your reminder that no one else gets to define your story if you don't take responsibility for it yourself. Many go backward because they didn't prepare their defense, and at this stage, there's no room for improvising. You can't afford to go back, because every time you do, it gets harder to rise again, and life, at this point, doesn't give you time for dress rehearsals. This is it, and what you have now can still be dignified, powerful, and free if you choose to write it with conviction. You're not here to repeat what's already been lived. You're here to close strong, to look back without shame, to look forward without fear, and to live this present moment with the certainty that every word you speak, every choice you make, is part of the legacy you're leaving behind. So yes, this is your final word, and no one, absolutely no one, has the right to dictate it for you. Respect isn't inherited, it's chosen. And today, more than ever, it's your turn to decide whether this chapter will be a soulless repetition or the boldest, brightest part of your story. If you've made it this far, don't take it lightly. Not everyone stays until the end when they're being shown a mirror. Most people prefer to turn off the screen, close their eyes, or retreat into soft phrases that don't make them uncomfortable. But you stayed, and that already says something important. That you're not here to be just another spectator of your life, but to make real decisions, even if they hurt. Even if they mean letting go of people, ideas, or habits you've carried for decades. This video wasn't a list of tips. It was a call, a direct confrontation with everything you're losing when you give away your time, your peace, your body, your faith, or your personal story just to maintain connections that no longer sustain you in return. Today, we've gone through 10 things that, after 60, you can no longer afford to sacrifice for anyone, not because you're selfish, but because dignity is non-negotiable. Each point we touched is a part of your internal structure, and if even one cracks, the whole foundation starts to shake. You're not here for compromises, you're here to live with clarity. Because at this stage, every day matters, every choice carries weight, and every boundary you draw becomes a silent declaration that you've chosen to respect yourself without asking for permission. Let me know that you were here, that you listened closely, and that this message resonated with you. Write in the comments the phrase, "I'm not going back," and tell me which country you're watching from. That phrase, though short, draws a line, a before and after, because there's no going back to the life you had if you've truly come to understand your worth. My name is Gabriel, and this is the Stoic Garden. I didn't come here to offer easy comfort. I came to speak to you with firmness, with respect, and with a truth that doesn't wear a mask. This channel exists for women like you, clear-eyed, wounded, but strong enough to rewrite their story. You are not alone, but you're not here to blend in either. You're here to wake up. And if this content spoke to your soul, I invite you to subscribe and become part of this community that doesn't run from the truth. Share this video with someone who needs to hear it, even if it hurts. Sometimes, one direct sentence is worth more than 1,000 pretty words. Don't stop here. On screen, I'm leaving you 2 more videos that follow this same path. Pick one and let's keep going, because this is just the beginning and your life still has a lot to say. And this time, the final word will be yours.